Alright, so I'll just get straight into the video. So I've asked Gemini to generate some African weapon concept for me, just a random idea to sort of work on for the tutorial. Now I have this, and this is what I need. So I'll download this image, and the next AI I'm going to be using is Tencent Hanyuan. You can just search Tencent Hanyuan on the internet, and you scroll down a bit to the Tencent HY3D Global and then just open it. It will bring you to this very page. Once you're here, just go to 3D Studio, and that's where you're going to do everything. Alright, so in 3D Studio, you have these options. The one you're going to be using is rows. So I click on rows and I wait for it to load. Alright, so in 3D Studio, you have all these options. You can see I've already done some tests, so I know how it works before I even started the tutorial. I've done a couple of generations. So what I'm going to do is I'll go to geometry generation. And in geometry generation, I pick the image I want to use from my PC. So the image I saved, I load it in. So depending on the amount of polygons I want on the high poly version, I choose from here. So usually I'm between 500k to 50k. I've not really enjoyed what I get with the 1 million polygons. So I'll go to 500k and then I generate. Alright, so the generation is done. This is what I got for the high poly version of the mesh. Now I can't work with this in a game engine or any 3D software. If I'm just making a store render or making a 3D print, this is cool. But in this situation, I want to make it into a game ready asset. So what I have to do next is come down to retopology and pick the poly count I want. So in retopology, I check high, then generate. Alright, so the retopology is done. It looks clean. The polygon still isn't that high. Something I can manage and then clean up in Blender if I have to. But then there are some artifacts over here that I'll work on when I get back into Blender. So now that I'm done, I need a base for the UV mapping of everything on it. So the next thing I'll do is I'll switch to the UV unwrapping tab. Then I just click on UV unwrap. Alright, so now I have a base for the UV map and I have an idea of where the seams are going to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'll just download this as an AVX file and go and then download the high poly also as an AVX file. Alright, so we are in Blender now, and as you can see, I've already done some generations, spent some time to do some cleanups, although this is what I'm currently on. I'm not done doing some cleanups and then to be ready, but the rest have been worked on, they look clean. So the mesh I've generated now, I just import it into the scene. So the low poly first, I'll make it stand upright 90 degrees, and then the high poly will come and that would also stand 90 degrees upwards. So they are all in place now, and align them to the center of the world. So something like this. All right, and push it up. Then apply all transforms. So now I can hide the high poly and do the cleanups I'm supposed to do on it. All right, so now that the cleanups are done, the next thing to do is properly lay out the UVs. So I'm going to discard the current UV I have and then just unwrap it myself. All right. So now we are good to go. I have the low poly mesh. I also have the high poly mesh. It's time to go into Substance Painter and then do some baking over there. All right. So we are in Substance Painter. What I'll do next is create a new project and select the object I want to bake. So Blade low poly will come first. Now it's going to be used in Unreal, so I leave the template as Unreal Engine starter assets. Resolution 2K is fine. DirectX cool. Create. Now I have the weapon in the scene. Now before I even begin to texture anything, I have to go to mode, bake mesh maps, and then I load my high poly mesh into the scene. So Blade high poly into the scene like this. Now I have to make some adjustments. I can try some options. I'll try the automatic and see what happens. Good, but I don't like the kind of stretch that I'm getting here, so I'll go back to distance based. Alright, so now baking is done. Now all the high poly details have been baked onto my low poly mesh. So now I can proceed to texturing it. And the texture won't be anything extra. So I'm just, because I've laid out the UVs very well over here, what I'm going to do is I'll just search for a metal object. And let's see. So I look for a steel, or iron. No, let me try the iron and see how the iron will look on it. Alright, cool. It looks good. Now I don't want it to affect the whole mesh. So what I'm going to do is right click and then I create a black mask. Now with this black mask, I pick the polygon fill tool, then I change it to UV chunk fill. I just click on the area I want it to affect like this. So now this part is affected by uh, the mask I'm working on, and this part is free. So probably let's say this part of the blade will be metallic, and then probably the lower part too, so I include them as well like this. And for this part I can't use the UV chunk fill, I just have to use the polygon fill and just draw a line over there to sort of fill it up. So I'll do the same thing for this side too, and I should be good to go. All right, now I'm left with the part where I want to sort of add some leather details. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do next. So I'll come below this layer, then I search for leather, and let's see the leather that I'll pick. So let's see, maybe this leather. Let's see how it looks. Uh, nope. So let's try another leather. So let's see this leather. Okay. Yes, this should work. Now I have to just make some tweaks over here. So the damage, tweak the damage a bit and get things going. Then I tweak the colors of the leather a bit, make it desaturate it a bit, okay, not too saturated. And let's see the pattern. What can we do about the pattern? What is the blur? All right, fine grain, cool, nice. So now I'll add some edge details to the blade. So what I'm going to do next is I'll add a mask, a smart mask, and I just find cavity rust, put it over here. Then I exclude So I'll put it in a group. Then I exclude this part of it because I don't want it to be affected by it. So like before, UV chunk fill for this side and this side, and probably this. Then I do a polygon fill for this area. Great. And same thing for this area too. Okay. So now we can proceed and then add those sweet elements over there. So I can change the color of the mask to sort of match my material I'm using and just tweak things around a bit. Okay. So now I have this, and this is looking really, really, really good. All right, so let's say the texturing that I'm doing is done. I'm satisfied with the results that I have. The next thing to do is to export it out. I mean the textures, export the textures out, and then reapply them in Unreal Engine. So what I'm going to do is I go to File, Export Textures. I pick the location I want to save it at. This time it's going to be at the same location. So Blade Maps, select. Then I should give it a name before I export. So Blade, export textures, pick the location again. And then over here, because I don't have an emissive channel on it, I just turn off emissive. And the rest should be good. I just click on export. Alright, so we are in Unreal Engine now. And before I import the weapon, I have to create a folder for it. So in my contents folder, I create a new folder, then I name it Blade. And over here in the Blade, I create another folder for the textures. Then I create another one for the material itself. Then finally, I create another one for the mesh itself, like this, to keep everything organized. So what I'm going to do next is start importing them into their designated locations. So AI, Blade Maps. Now the maps are going to go into texture. All right. And the mesh is going to go over here. So Blade Low Poly, this is the one we used. So I just drop it here. And I just have to make sure that I'm not creating a new material or importing textures, and just import. Now it's in the scene. So now we can proceed to creating the material. So in the material folder, I create a new material and then call it bleed underscore material. Then I right click and then create a material instance for it because I'll need it. So I open the material graph itself and open my content browser here so I can load in the maps. So the textures, load in the base, load in the normal. Before I load in the uh, before I load in this map, I need to double click it and then uncheck sRGB. It's very important. So I come back here and drop that one to over here. So it's as basic as just connecting the RGB to their designated connectors. So normal to normal, this to this. So for this, the R will go to ambient occlusion, green roughness, and then blue metallic, like this. So now I have the material set up. Alright, so we are done with this. I just save, apply. I can close this now. So I can now just drag and drop my mesh into the scene and just apply the material instance to it. And we have our texture. So I'll go back to lit mode, turn on real time, and then yes, we have our game ready asset in the scene that we can proceed to work with, like this.